While we may not know who the Oklahoma State football coach is going to be yet, at least we have a reasonable expectation of it being somewhat soon. We also don't know if James Franklin is interested in this job or not. However, it's kind of crazy to think that Mike Gundy might be telling James Franklin that you don't want this job.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. Make sure that you go download the FanDuel app today. Meanwhile, we get to slide into this conversation of the coaching search, and naturally, it's heated up. There was a ton of recruits on hand for a homecoming performance that for 3 quarters was pretty adequate. The fan base showed up in droves, which is precisely what the recruits needed to see. But the most interesting thing that the recruits were talking about is the fact that they are being told that Oklahoma State will have their new football coach within the next month. So sometime at the end of November, Oklahoma State likely is already going to have this decision made, because I don't think they would be telling recruits on hand at Boone Pickens Stadium that we don't know what we're looking for quite yet, or we don't have a time frame for what we're trying to accomplish yet. If you're giving a reasonable time frame to recruits, that means you've probably already identified options 1, 2, and 3, and you've already negotiated at least some semblance of a deal that if you were to hire that individual, that the remaining parts would fall in line, including the staff and the ability to go out and start recruiting immediately. So that is very encouraging. Do we know who the coach is going to be? No, we do not. Do we know what direction that they're thinking about leaning? No, we don't, because we've heard names popped out there from the common consensus, Zach Robinson, to an old Cowboy that was probably too close to Gundy to come back, but maybe now we're hearing not, and Todd Monken. Then you have the upcomer, G.J. Kinney. You have Alex Golesh, who does have an Oklahoma State connection. Then you have Eric Henderson, the defense coordinator at USC. Josh Henson is another name that's been brought up. We sifted through the John Grudens and the Gus Malzahns of the world. And maybe, perhaps, we reached out to James Franklin. I'm sure we did reach out to James Franklin. I don't know what his interest level would be in this job. I think that it could be a nice move to try to orchestrate a package deal. I think all of us would agree Jim Knowles coming back to Stillwater would be beneficial. But at the end of the day, if it's true, Robert Allen said on his radio show this morning that, let me pull the tweet up so I don't get it wrong. He said something along the lines of, Mike Gundy would probably tell James Franklin, oh, here it is. Kurt, Cowboy Attaboy, said that he was watching the show, and Robert Allen said that Gundy would discourage James Franklin from taking the Oklahoma State job. Don't know if that's true or not. Robert Allen is very, very close to Mike Gundy, so it could very well be that is a plausible scenario that has happened. I do find it kind of crazy because Robert Allen has never written anything negatively about anything Mike Gundy's ever said, so this would be kind of a unique role for Robert Allen to put this out, that if it's true, this is torpedoing Mike Gundy's future in Stillwater. Not even necessarily as a coach. He's currently the GOAT, the legend that deserves a statue, deserves a ring of honor. That's not going to be tarnished regardless of what he is or isn't telling other coaches. And this isn't like a direct quote saying that Gundy said, I'm going to tell James Franklin. So maybe this is just hyperbolic ridiculousness. But for Robert Allen to be putting something like this out, knowing how close he is with Mike Gundy and knowing that for more or less 20 years, he would never put out anything negative that Mike Gundy would say, this is pretty crazy. If it's true, this would be very damning for Mike Gundy, in my personal opinion. Why would he sabotage himself? Because clearly a large portion of the fan base didn't like the way that it was handled, even myself included, who's aired my grievances about some of the things that Mike Gundy has done over the last handful of years, just in the last 4 or 5 years primarily. But why would you go tell other coaches that you don't want to take the Oklahoma State job? And hopefully that this is something that can be proven as untrue, because I would imagine that the most staunch Mike Gundy defenders of all time, if this was accurate, they would probably lose a little bit of respect for Mike Gundy. How can you be the man, the myth, the legend that helped build Oklahoma State to where it's at and always preach the cowboy culture and loyal and true, and then to turn around and even be willing to tell other coaches, do not take this job? That doesn't seem all that loyal and true. And again, there's nowhere indicating that this is an exact quote from Mike Gundy by RA, but I think that you do have to peel back the layer of the onion that the man who has never put out anything negative about Mike Gundy is now saying that Mike Gundy would tell James Franklin, you don't want this job. That's problematic for more than anybody, Mike Gundy. And maybe this is RA's got to put some stuff out so he can kind of stay closer to the program. And if that's the case, I understand it completely, right? Having a little bit of a degree of separation, but it's also a bold move. It's also bold to put out there if it is true that Mike Gundy is potentially telling other coaches that you don't want this job or you shouldn't take this job. There could be a myriad of reasons, right? And I saw one thing floated earlier. Perhaps Mike Gundy is sabotaging James Franklin's chances to come to Stillwater because he thinks James Franklin wouldn't be a good hire. But after a 3-9 season and a 1-win season coming in this year, with it being very visible that the team is functioning better without Mike Gundy, the team is functioning better without a decent number of transfer portal dudes. So if you were to be the guy who's protecting Oklahoma State from James Franklin, then maybe it should come with an explanation. Because if there's any amount of this that is accurate, that is not good for Mike Gundy. I don't think that it derails his statue. I don't think it derails his name up in the stadium. But if there's corroboration out there that sometime in the future that James Franklin or whomever else, maybe it's a GJ Kinney, maybe it's an Alex Golesh, we don't really know. But if it's ever found out that Mike Gundy was in fact telling people you don't want that Oklahoma State job, then his claim to fame of being the cowboy culture dude that instilled loyal and true and made it a physical, tangible attribute to be recruited upon, then maybe the statue does get pushed back a little bit. Maybe the name on the stadium does get sidetracked for a couple of years. Mike Gundy still earned and deserved all of that, even if this is 100% verifiable that Mike Gundy is telling certain individuals that they don't want the Oklahoma State job or they shouldn't take the Oklahoma State job or whatever the case may be. There has to be some validity to it. Or the other option is RA is doing this on purpose. Why would RA say something to make Mike Gundy look this bad without a purposeful angle to it? I'm as confused as everybody else out there. And yeah, it's a later episode because I was hoping that there would be some things that came out later on throughout the course of the day that now that's not what Robert really meant to say, or it was taken out of context, but none of that's happening. There's no retraction. There's no walking it back. There's no saying that this was taken out of context or it was a tongue-in-cheek style of statement. So it's great that we now know that the recruits are being told, hey, stick with us, keep coming to games, keep being involved in the recruiting process because we're about to give you a name in the next month that is going to give you what you're looking for to commit to Oklahoma State or be part of the future of Oklahoma State football moving forward. That's positive. There's no way, even if you're a Gundy hater, and I have been accused of being a Gundy hater at times as well, and I've hated on some of the things that he's done. I didn't like the way this whole firing was handled. I thought that we could have navigated it a little bit better, but I also recognize that there's a portion of this that for Mike Gundy being the statue of the loyal and true dude, there's elements that he has caused that led to his firing. There's elements of, leaving things undone or giving too much responsibility to other coaches or not being as heavily involved in recruiting or NIL. There's tons of things that Mike Gundy has done that is directly responsible for Oklahoma State being an absolute dumpster fire of a college football team. But this may be the most egregious of all of them, if true. And the sad part of it is Gundy is a very stubborn individual. Gundy does hold grudges. And so as much as even myself would like to believe that this was not exactly what Robert Allen was trying to infer, It's easy to connect the dots to see that Mike Gundy is a spiteful enough individual that he would not want James Franklin to take the job. Maybe it's for a good reason, but you have to at least question if it's because he doesn't want to see somebody come in and immediately right his wrongs. Regardless of what the reasoning is, unless Mike Gundy himself comes out and says, yes, I would have told James Franklin, or I was going to, or I did tell him because he wouldn't be good at X, Y, or Z, which is not good for Stillwater. So be it. Cool. But other than that, yeah, this is very, very damning on Mike Gundy, if applicable. What is not damning is you getting right with your pocketbook with the NFL season being here. Right now, new customers with FanDuel can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if you're a winner. All you have to do is pick the bet, put $5 down. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it gives you so many different ways to play. Built-in parlays, player props, live game betting features. It makes watching football more exciting because your investment level is that much higher. Whether you're the casual fan or you like diving deep into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better for you. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app, and get started today with FanDuel, the bee's knees of all your betting needs. Next, we got to talk about Quo. Whenever you're looking for the right tools to make a big difference as a business owner, you got to get Quo. Formerly OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before. It just obviously has a different name now. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. So when every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the number one business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or the computer, so no more carrying multiple phones. You can even have a landline, or you can get rid of the ridiculousness. That's what Quo can do for you, formerly known as OpenPhone. Their built-in AI agent is an absolute game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or you're part of a larger team, Quo is precisely what you need to help get your business rocking and rolling. Do not miss out on the opportunities. We've all had moments that you knew that maybe one more phone call was going to make a big difference for your business, or maybe I should have been able to take that phone call. And if I would have, it would have been an instantaneous benefit. This is that service just for you to never have those moments of missing out again. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo. Formerly OpenPhone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is QUO.com/lockedoncollege. You can keep your existing phone number for free. No missed calls, no missed customers, no missed opportunities when you have Quo. Yeah, I hear people announce that word differently, so we'll figure it out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we get to talk a little bit more about the fact that, yes, this was a loss, but Oklahoma State put up 377 yards. Oklahoma State played a reasonable football game for the better part of 3 quarters. Is it a W yet? No. Is it a little bit of a W? Yeah, it is, because we had one good quarter against Baylor. We had one good quarter, maybe 1.5 against Houston. We didn't really do much in the way of having positive moments against Arizona for the most part. But this is the second most offensive yards we've put up this season. We're going to talk a little bit more about Kevin Johns in segment 3. But you have to feel like this team is getting better. Without Mike Gundy, without guys like Josh Ford, as unfortunate as it may be. I mean, even we're missing Noah McKinney, and the offensive line looked pretty serviceable against Cincinnati. This just leads us into the fact that if we keep at this pace, right, we're eventually going to knock down somebody. We're going to take out somebody. You couldn't say somebody we're not supposed to, because we're not supposed to beat anybody this season. And it doesn't look like that we're going to have an athletic advantage the rest of the season. but it's about stringing some things together, right? This could have gone a multitude of different ways, but the most common would be when you lose a coach and you lose a bunch of roster additions and you lose your defense coordinator as well, and then you lose your safeties coach, that would equal an absolute nosedive for the rest of the year. And that's not what you're seeing. And I think this even reverts back to some of this conversation about potentially Gundy reaching out or being willing to tell other prominent coaches that they don't want this job. It makes him look even better or even worse because we're doing better without him, right? So even if that is a viable argument and Mike Gundy is supposedly, possibly even contemplating telling somebody like James Franklin that you don't want this job, it's pretty easy for James Franklin to turn around and be like, well, actually, they got better without you. They got better without the guys that you hired, right? They've gotten better since you've exited Stillwater, Oklahoma. So whatever your reasonings are that Coach X, Y, or Z maybe shouldn't fall in love with the Oklahoma State job, I think it's easily available as an option for them to turn it back around on Gundy and say, actually, maybe you are the problem, right? Maybe it's not an Oklahoma State thing. Maybe the Board of Regents could have handled things better. Maybe the fan base could be less poor. There's a ton of things that you could throw out there. But I think it's reasonable that when you see Oklahoma State's improvement every single week without Mike Gundy, that it does add at least a little bit of validity to the fact that this kind of started at the top. How do we perform better offensively with Doug Meacham minus Mike Gundy? And then how do we follow that up with the quarterback coach being upgraded? And this makes me feel even worse for Rattay. Like we talked about on this show, that as much as people were downtrodden about Tim Rattay, the information I was getting is that Tim Rattay was not a problem. If anything, Tim Rattay wasn't given enough of a voice. So if Tim Rattay had an opinion on who should be starting a quarterback, they didn't listen to him. And if Tim Rattay thought that it was advantageous to, help boost this deep ball, his opinion wasn't really weighed all that heavily. So Tim Rattay was just a dude that was helping the quarterbacks, helping them on the film, collecting a paycheck with hardly little say. And Kevin Johns gets elevated, and you're seeing, again, more improvements. 17 points, it could be viewed as problematic, but I think coming into the game, a lot of people recognize the fact that Cincinnati is a legitimate ball club. Cincinnati is a team good enough to make a push for a Big 12 title, especially now that you've seen Arizona State take down Texas Tech. That elevates Arizona State back to close to where they were last season. They will not live down the loss of Mississippi State, right? That's always going to be a black eye for the Big 12. And for that reason, it would almost be better if it were to be somebody else, but it can't even necessarily be Cincinnati because they lost to Nebraska. Nebraska's not very good either. Well, you can't say that. Nebraska is pretty good. That's just me just talking crap on them leaving the Big 12. But nonetheless, this is an improvement that we're seeing week in and week out. We're seeing improvements individually. We're seeing backups play better than the starters, which again leads you back into the questioning of Mike Gundy. And I bring this up to accentuate the point that if it's true that Mike Gundy has negative things to say about Oklahoma State or Chad Weiberg or the Board of Regents or the hiring process or whatever, that's not a good look for him. But it would be one thing if Oklahoma State was getting worse every single week, right? Because then you could have some plausible deniability in saying that he was the reason. He was the culprit behind it. And again, we got what we asked for. We wanted Mike Gundy to hire a coaching staff that would recruit their own dudes, that would run their own plays, that would call their own systems and do everything their way. And that's what he did, right? And it was a disaster. But he should have never let it get this far, right? And now we're seeing an improvement every single week. I think that if you're an opposing team for Oklahoma State, you got to be at least somewhat concerned because you don't want to be beaten by the team that lost to Tulsa. You just don't. Like it's a horrendous look. If you're a coach for a Big 12 team and you're on the fringe, like if Oklahoma State beats K-State, like I guarantee you Chris Kleiman's seat gets super hot just because that's almost like a G5 loss. but we are getting better. So there is going to be some teams out there that are at least slightly concerned that we get this thing figured out. It's kind of like, the argument for Arizona State a couple years ago was, yeah, they only won a couple ball games, but look at how many one-score games that they lost. Like, look how many ball games they were in till the fourth quarter, and then those individuals making those statements ended up being right because they returned a decent chunk of the roster. They still had to dive pretty heavily into the transfer portal, but you saw that roster look entirely different the next season, just in the wins and losses column. But if you were a diehard supporter of Arizona State a few years ago, you could see that we're not that bad. We're not very good, but we're not Tulsa levels bad. Oklahoma State is Tulsa levels bad, or at least we have been. I think if we played Tulsa now with Doug Meacham in charge and Clint Bowen in charge and Kevin Johns calling the offense, I think it's a different story. Yes, I think we could beat Tulsa right now with a wide receiver, Sam Jackson, the fifth playing quarterback. I do. And that's not good for Mike Gundy. So he should probably be fairly cognizant about what he's saying to other coaches, because we all know Mike Gundy, one of the benefits to being a legend in the industry is you have the connections to reach any coach in the country you want to. Like, there's not a coach in America that would turn down a phone call from Mike Gundy. So if he wanted to be on the warpath and he wanted to tell James Franklin not to come to Oklahoma State, unfortunately, that would be something that at least gets the phone call. Fortunately for all of us, though, I think you can see on the football field that maybe Mike Gundy was a bigger part of the problem than originally thought of. Ladies and gentlemen, Monarch Money is going to help you. So why would you go with anybody else? Because most of us cannot name all of our financial accounts or even what all of them are worth. Between 401ks, savings, investments, it's easy to lose track. And that means you can leave money out on the table. That's why you need to start using Monarch immediately. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial goals together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It's going to help you stay organized with all of your accounts, track your spending, and get a better handle on all of your investments without having to touch a spreadsheet ever. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money's going and how to make it work harder for you. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks anymore. Use this code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first entire year. That is monarchmoney.com. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for half off your first entire year. Head on over to Monarch to get that financial peace of mind that you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Johns. Yes, so we mentioned it, 377 yards, not the most output of the season. We got to tip our cap to Haas Haney in Oklahoma State for putting up over 400 yards, 403, if I recall correctly, against University of Tennessee Martin. But there was definitely improvements. The best rushing performance of the season was Trent Hallen against Baylor, which I believe was 89 yards. Rodney Fields reels off a $163 against Cincinnati. Yes, Brendan Sorsby got kind of crazy, but even then, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. It wasn't as bad as it has been with the starters out there. Right? We can say that. Cincinnati's a pretty good football team. We know they have an NFL tight end, and we know he was going to be a matchup nightmare. And unfortunately, Mordecai McDaniel has been one of the best players on the field the last couple of weeks, and he had some of that Kendall Daniels, I'm not going to chase this tackle down, creep up in this ball game. Unfortunately, that is a byproduct sometimes of losing the way that we are, but it didn't affect Kevin Johns. Right? I'm going to say it again. You come out and you put up 377 yards, you put up 17 points, you have a real shot going into the third quarter of making this thing even more interesting. I think we've all seen that Sam Jackson has limitations when it comes to decision-making. It is pretty obvious why he was switched from a quarterback to a wide receiver. Athletically, he's got it. He's got the zip. He's got the touch. He's got the arm. He's got a cannon. But reading the defense and making the throws in time, it's still a little nuanced for him. With that being said, I would like to see a little bit more Noah Walters. I think that we can have some fun gadgetry with Sam Jackson and Noah Walters in the backfield. Naturally, we did see Noah at the very end of the game, but that means he wasn't part of the game plan. But outside of that, Rodney Fields had a masterful day. And it was nice seeing Sesi Vailahe get rewarded. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Trent Hallen. I haven't talked to him in a couple weeks. But Sesi earned more starts. Like, honestly, if we're going off of just earning things, Sesi Vailahe earned more playing time against Oregon. Realistically, if you go back and watch the UT Martin game, Sesi should have got the start against Oregon. He should have. I mean, I'm not saying that he should have been the running back the entire game. Maybe not. But the first 2 or 3 carries of the ball game should have probably went to Sesi. He earned that. He deserved that. So here we are weeks later, and he's getting more opportunities. So I think that's pretty cool to see Sesi get his opportunities out there, make the most of them. It's also cool to see Rodney Fields doing exceptionally well. It's great to see Latanian Fields doing remarkably well. It's great to see Deshaun Brown get out there, finally have a presence again, had a wonderful sack. You could tell that he was flying around pretty free. And we need those guys. Again, I've mentioned them by name as some of the dudes that need to be part of the foundational building blocks moving forward. I know some people in the comments think that we only need 5 to 8 players of this team. I think that's an insane number. But if you're going to tell me that guys like Rodney Fields and Deshaun Brown and Latanian Fields and Gunnar Wilson and Sidvini Hifili Kafusi and Landon Dean and Ike Essenwood, if those are going to be part of that 8 to 10-man crew that sticks around, then I'm okay with that. It is very evident that there's still tons of dudes out there that are making some things happen. And I think the pace of the game was better with Kevin Johns at the helm running the offense. Doug Meacham has had a much better offensive output than we did with Mike Gundy still here. So clearly he was freed up a little bit. But as you saw, the offense did get better with Doug